join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For those participating via Zoom, when we get to the item that you want to speak on, please use the raise your hand feature, and the city clerk will turn on your microphone to speak at the appropriate time. First item is the roll call. Let the record show that all council members are present except for Councilmember Bucci. There are no presentations this evening. The next item is a public comment on any item not on the agenda. For Zoom attendees, please use your raise hand feature if you would like to speak. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this matter? Ms. Harrington, are there any requests on Zoom?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. The consent calendar consists of item D1 through D5. Are there any items staff would like pulled from the consent calendar?
Not this evening, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Benoon. Are there any items the public would like pulled from the consent calendar? Are there any items that the city council would like to pull from the consent calendar?
Not this evening.
Thank you. Ms. Harrington, is there anybody on Zoom that would like to comment on any item on the consent calendar?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. The consent calendar consists of the following items. Number one, adopt a resolution finding that there is a proclaimed state of emergency, finding that the meeting in person would present imminent risk to the health or safety of attendees as a result of the state of emergency, and authorizing continued remote teleconferenced meetings of the legislative bodies of the city of Newark for the 30-day period beginning December 15th pursuant to AB 361. Number two, adopt a resolution accepting the subdivision improvements for tracks 8419 and 8420, villages 3 and 4 of Sanctuary Village, a 386-unit residential subdivision in General Plan Area 3 at the northwest corner of Cherry and Stevenson Boulevard. 3, adopt a resolution accepting the subdivision improvements of tracks 8270, 8417, and 8418. The initial large lot subdivisions and villages 1 and 2 of Sanctuary Village, a 386-unit residential subdivision in General Plan Area 3 at the northwest corner of Cherry Street and Stevenson Boulevard. 4, adopt a resolution approving a side letter agreement to the Memoranda of Understanding between the City of Newark and the Newark Police Association to amend the process and provisions related to leave accrual and buyback program. And 5, adopt a resolution approving a side letter agreement to the Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Newark and the Newark Police Management Association to provide for compensation to police lieutenants for certain overtime work associated with the 2022-2023 Selective Traffic Enforcement Program grant. Would someone like to move these items to be approved or as recommended by staff, with any items approved by resolution or ordinance being numbered consecutively, and that the reading of the title suffice for the purpose of introduction or adoption of the ordinance?
Move to approve as read.
All second.
Thank you. Moved by Councilmember Collazo. Vice Mayor Collazo.
Thank you.
Seconded by Councilmember Jorgens. Roll call, please.
There it is.
Well, the first time we passed it on a 3 to 2 absent. Now we passed it on a 2, 1 absent and 2 present. So we're going to try one more time.
Okay.
Let the record show that that item passed on 4 yeses and 1 absent. Councilmember Bucci. I will perfect that process. I have 2 years.
Yes, you do.
Public hearing. The next item is other business, affordable housing program information report. Mr. Benoon?
Yes, good evening, Your Honor, members of the council. This item is a presentation from city staff as well as Baird and Driscoll Community Planning Group. Mr. Turner is going to go ahead and give an overview of the agenda of the items that we will be discussing tonight. Following that, the first consultant will give an overview of all of the actions the city has taken to date to implement the existing affordable housing work plan. And then the second consultant will go over what is intended steps that we will take to fully implement the plan. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Turner. Mr. Turner?
Thank you, City Manager Bernoon. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Staff is pleased to provide the council with this informational report on the update of the city's affordable housing programs. The city has made significant progress on providing opportunities for affordable housing located in our community, and we do have a lot to look forward to in the coming year. Can I have the next slide for the agenda, please? So the items on tonight's agenda, really 4 items. First, we want to provide a background on the city's efforts to develop affordable housing and specifically on our efforts to implement the affordable housing work plan that council adopted in 2021. We'll go into more detail about the affordable housing work plan and our efforts to implement the various items on the work plan. We'll then take a look at the 6th cycle housing element update, and the consultant will provide an overview of our efforts on implementing and preparing that update. And then we'll take a look forward on the items that are on our agenda for 2023. Before we begin, I would like to introduce our consultant team who will be providing the presentation for this evening. Paul Penninger has served as the city's affordable housing advisor since late 2020 and has helped the city develop the affordable housing work plan and is currently leading the consultant's effort to update the housing element. Recently, Paul announced that he is joining Bay Area Economics, which is an urban economics and real estate advisory firm, but Paul's going to continue leading the housing element effort through the Baird and Driscoll Community Planning team. And our second consultant is Christy Wang. She's a principal with Baird and Driscoll, and she's assisting the city with our affordable housing notice of funding availability effort, which you'll hear more about within the presentation. Christy will be our primary contact from Baird and Driscoll going forward, and will collaborate with the city into 2023 to implement our affordable housing work plan and our housing element. So with that, I'll turn the rest of the presentation over to Mr. Penninger.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And it's really a pleasure to be here again this evening. Congratulations, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We're excited to talk to you about the progress we've made on implementing the Affordable Housing Work Plan and perhaps even more importantly, what's in store for 2023. So we have about a 20-minute presentation and with the remainder of the time to answer your questions and engage with you in a dialogue around what your priorities are, what you think the community's priorities should be for 2023 related to affordable housing. So just by way of providing a quick framework or background on everything that the city is doing related to affordable housing, the current policy framework is set forth in the general plan housing element that was adopted for the 2015 to 2023 planning period. So that is incorporated as part of the general plan and sets forth both sites that have been identified to accommodate affordable housing as well as programs and policies to advance affordable housing. So that 5th cycle housing element is the document that we're currently updating and improving and bringing current with state law as part of the 6th cycle housing element update. So that's something that we're going to talk about in some depth later on in the presentation. In addition to the housing element, in May 2021, the City Council adopted an affordable housing work plan, which was prepared after extensive consultation, not just with council members, but also with members of the Planning Commission and the Community Development Advisory Committee and other key stakeholders. And we'll talk about some of what the direction was at the time that you established the affordable housing work plan. But that's been what staff and consultants have been working on really since late spring, early summer 2021 on a variety of fronts to implement affordable housing policies and programs and get affordable housing built in Newark. So the Affordable Housing Work Plan, I want to talk first about the priority housing needs that were identified as part of our background research and interviews and key stakeholder outreach that we prepared for the Affordable Housing Work Plan, and then I'm going to talk about the policies and programs that you established as part of the Affordable Housing Work Plan. So a few key housing needs that were identified by members of the council and others during the research phase in 2021. Young families, the need for housing, affordable housing to serve young families, and particularly larger sized families, was something that came up repeatedly and has indeed come up again and again in Newark in all of our outreach that we've conducted, including as part of the community engagement process for the housing element. What we hear from folks over and over is the need for more housing to serve families, and particularly families that have more than a couple of kids. So young families, key workers. So by key workers, we mean teachers, first responders, and others. EMTs, other folks who are really key parts of the workforce in Newark. Individuals and families at risk of homelessness, people who are either currently homeless or who are living in precarious housing situations. People with disabilities or other special housing needs, people who have maybe ambulatory challenges, low-income senior citizens, and then finally veterans. So these were all priority housing needs that were identified by people that we talked to during the Affordable Housing Work Plan research phase. And so taking into account all of those priority housing needs and everything else that we heard as part of the Affordable Housing Work Plan research and development phase, we developed a set of priorities that you then adopted as part of the Affordable Housing Work Plan. And this brief kind of timeline here shows you some of the key parts of the Affordable Housing Work Plan and where we are in implementing them. So first, we have been in the process of updating the sixth cycle general plan housing element. That's something that's ongoing. I'll talk more about that in a minute. We have also been, at the direction of council, we prepared a notice of funding availability, which we issued at the end of the summer, seeking to find a developer who with an eligible project that would apply for city funding. So we prepared the funding NOFA and are currently in the process of preparing a staff recommendation to the Community Development Advisory Committee on how to award that funding. Council was also very interested in exploring the idea of a local preferences ordinance so that local residents or workers in Newark would have priority in applications for affordable housing development. So that's something that we've also been exploring that we'll talk about in a minute. And then finally, part of the affordable housing, another couple of key elements of the Affordable Housing Work Plan were to explore affordable home ownership programs and also look at the feasibility of changing the city's current affordable housing ordinance to require on-site production rather than allowing developers to pay into a fee fund. Those are just a few of the key priorities and their status. Very importantly, while all of this has been going on and staff and consultants have been working on advancing the Affordable Housing Work Plan, there have also been a number of developments that have been making their way through the entitlements and city processes. And in total, these 4 projects shown on this slide come to 321 affordable units that are in the city's affordable housing development pipeline. Now, these are homes that will be, in many cases, very deeply affordable to families and individuals with extremely low incomes or very low incomes, who will have the ability to live in very high quality, well-designed housing in the community over the next, 12 to 18 months as they're finishing their entitlement processes and going into the development phase. So these are very exciting projects that are in the city's pipeline, and I think something that the city can be very proud of, that these are all moving forward. Okay, let's now talk about the housing element update. So first I wanted to say just a couple of words about where the city is in the housing element update. We are just finishing the preparation of the public review draft of the housing element, and that's something that needs to go then in front of the community for a 30-day mandatory review period before we can then revise it and submit it to the state Housing and Community Development Department for their review and approval. And they'll submit a letter after 90 days saying, identifying areas where they would like to see improvements or changes or edits, and then the city will have a chance to respond back to that. At the point that HCD has reviewed the housing element and changes have been made, at that point, we would come back to the council and ask for, and present it again and ask for for the council to adopt the housing element as part of the general plan. Now, the statute that sets forth the process for jurisdictions to update the six-cycle housing element sets January 31st, 2023 as a deadline. Newark, like many communities across the Bay Area, will not meet that formal deadline. There is, however, something called a grace period, well, informally called a grace period, which sets that there is a period of 90 days following January 31st, during which jurisdictions aren't subject to the rezoning, some of the rezoning requirements associated with not having a housing element in compliance. So it's a little technical, but the short answer is that the public review draft has taken longer than we expected to update. It will get done, it will get published in January, and we don't foresee, as you'll see in a minute, the city having any problems getting certification from HCD based on your site's inventory and the policies and programs and other elements that we've explored in the housing element. So I'm sure you'll have more questions about that when we get into the discussion. Some of the key parts of the housing element update: community outreach and engagement. This cycle, more importantly than in any other housing element update cycle, the state has emphasized the need to do really thorough, robust community engagement, and that's something that we've taken very seriously and have gone out and talked to key stakeholders, conducted focus groups. Welcome, Councilmember Bucci. And we have, the city has also developed a website. The core of the housing element update that I'll talk about is RENA and proposed sites. I'll also talk about affirmatively furthering fair housing, what that means and how that's captured in the housing element. And then I'll give you some examples of policies and programs. Now, obviously, we don't have time to go through all of the policies and programs tonight, but I'll give you some kind of highlights and key examples of policies and programs that are included in the draft housing element. So community engagement. We started in the summer and conducted meetings through the fall of 2022 and have continued through the city's website to collect comments on the housing element, including from interested property owners and others who are, want to know more about the city's plans for housing in the future. So this is something that is not a one-time deal. We'll continue to engage the community through a variety of different forums going into January in the public review draft phase to make sure that we're getting the full diversity of perspectives in the city of Newark on the housing element. Okay, so the core of the housing element in many ways is the city's share of the regional housing needs allocation. That is the number of housing units by affordability level that the city is being asked to plan for during the six-cycle housing element, which is from 2023 to 2031. So as you can see from this slide, and we've talked about it before, the total number of units that you're being asked to plan for is 1,874, and this is broken down between 4 different affordability levels, from very low income to above moderate income. And as you can see from this slide, we've identified in the public review draft more than enough sites to accommodate that number of units during the planning period. And the types of sites that we've identified are really of 2 types. They're either sites where there's planned projects, so these are projects that are already in the planning pipeline, or for which there's a specific plan or a developer project sponsor that we know is proposing a specific project. So an example of that would be New Park Mall Phase 1A, right? That's an actual project that's in the development pipeline that's just part of this planned units column here. Other housing sites are sites that are either vacant or non-vacant sites. So non-vacant sites are sites that have another structure or built improvement on the land that could be redeveloped during the planning period. The housing sites are either vacant or non-vacant sites that are zoned residential or that will be rezoned residential or to allow residential uses as part of the housing element program and policy section during the planning period. So between all of the planned projects and your vacant and non-vacant sites, we've identified capacity for the city to accommodate up to really more than 5,300 units during the planning period, which is more than double the number of units that you need to accommodate according to your RENA. Now, this is very good, both because very few jurisdictions have this number of great sites to accommodate housing, so you're doing well. And it's also very good because the state is likely to make, in their comments on the HED draft in early next year, a number of comments on specific sites, and so it's good to have a buffer. It's also good to have a buffer so that if some of these sites get developed with something other than housing during the planning period, you do still have enough sites to meet your RENA. And there's a law which people refer to as the no net loss law, which says that if you do lose one of your sites that you've identified in your regional housing needs allocation sites inventory, and it gets developed, for another use, either a different affordability level or another use from housing altogether, that you need to replace those sites so that there's no net loss of sites. So that's why best practice is for jurisdictions to include some sort of a buffer, usually a 20 or 30% buffer on top of their RENA, to make sure that they have enough sites to accommodate all of their housing need during the planning period without any no net loss issues. So the good news here is that you have plenty of sites, and the sites inventory has a very robust number of both planned projects and non-vacant and vacant sites. Another key part of the housing element for the sixth cycle is to look at all of your sites inventory and your programs and policies, not just for total production of units by affordability level, but also to think about how the city, working with developer partners, can affirmatively further fair housing by making sure that that new affordable housing is sited in areas of high opportunity with good access to services, schools, jobs, and other amenities. So it's taking a holistic look at how housing is sited, how housing is provided to encourage inclusiveness and to overcome past or existing patterns of segregation. So this is a subject to a law that was passed by the legislature a couple years ago, and has resulted in this new section, this planning period of the housing element around affirmatively furthering fair housing. So this map shows one of many, many maps that are included in the draft housing element, and which are described in some detail and analyzed in some detail, which shows the planned and proposed and non-vacant and vacant sites from the regional housing needs allocation compared to median household income by block group in the city of Newark. And so this type of analysis is something that we do as part of the affirmatively furthering fair housing section to show how the city is planning for affordable housing to be located in areas of high opportunity or areas where lower income folks will have access to better amenities, jobs, schools, et cetera, and overcome patterns of segregation and exclusion. I see you all looking very closely at the map, which makes me think that we should have blown this up a little bit bigger.
It's more a reflection of our vision.
Or both. So there's a whole series of maps in the housing element that you'll see when you see the public review draft that show housing sites vis-a-vis income and a variety of other variables, socioeconomic variables and other characteristics. Okay. And last but not least, there's a whole set of goals and then policies and programs that build on everything that the city's already been doing as part of the Affordable Housing Work Plan that are enumerated in the housing element and will be in the public review draft. I'm just going to list off the 7 major goals. Some of these are really in response to state laws that require the city to, to address certain issues, and some of them are really coming directly from direction we've gotten from the council and from community feedback. So the goals in the draft housing element are preserve and improve existing housing, facilitate the development of more homes for more people, reduce and remove constraints to affordable housing, that's both governmental constraints and non-governmental constraints, help people stay in their homes and communities, increase access to affordable housing, that's for people who are either having economic barriers to affordable housing or physical barriers, so people who have, as I mentioned before, as an example, ambulatory difficulties in making sure that housing is accessible, affordable, and available to all members of the community. Enhance quality of life, so make investments along with housing that enhance the quality of life in Newark. And then finally, further fair housing. That's both through formal fair housing laws and regulations and partnering with fair housing providers, and through affirmatively furthering fair housing by making sure that housing is located in areas of high opportunity. Some examples of policies and programs that are included in the draft housing element are increasing housing for large households. That's something that we have carried forward from the Affordable Housing Work Plan. And then this is a new policy, which I did want to highlight this evening, and that is to allow by right approval of projects that have 20% of affordable units on reused sites. So what this means is that for those sites in your sites inventory that were identified in either the 4th or the 5th cycle housing element that you're proposing to reuse for the 6th cycle housing element, the HCD would like to see text amendments made to the zoning code so that those sites are developable by right. So that if an affordable housing developer, for example, were to come forward and say that they wanted to develop one of the sites that's identified in your sites inventory, that would be then subject to a ministerial level of review rather than a conditional use or some other type of entitlement process. So that's a new state law, AB 1397, that is something that a lot of jurisdictions are currently grappling with as part of their housing element update processes. And then finally, a few other kind of key example programs and policies. We want to, as I mentioned before, go forward with developing a local preferences ordinance. The city has done a lot of work already working with a consultant. We'd had a study session a few months back where we talked about this, where we did a disparate impact and displacement study to set the stage and to provide the basis for adopting a local preferences ordinance to give preference to local workers and residents in new affordable housing. We now want to go forward and build on that very extensive study process and collaboration with the county to develop a local preferences ordinance or policy. We want to begin work on an affordable home ownership program to bring home ownership within reach for more Newark residents. And another key policy that I wanted to talk about is amending the existing affordable housing ordinance to require on-site production of units. So this will require a feasibility study and a nexus study to set the basis for doing that. As economic conditions are, of course, changing and things are difficult in the development environment right now, but that's something that we're looking forward to doing in the next planning period. So with that, I wanted to turn it over to my colleague, Christy Wong, to talk about next steps, and I'm going to shut up now, and we'll take your questions and hopefully get some direction from you. Yes.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. We're very sad at Baird Driscoll that Paul's going to be leaving us, but I'm going to hold on to him a little bit so we can ensure that there's a seamless transition for you and make sure we have the right brain power when we need it. This is really reiterating some of the things that Paul's already talked about. Obviously, our first priority is getting your housing element adopted and certified. and getting those following policies and programs started. And some of those are things that you've already identified in the Affordable Housing Work Plan. And so designing the local preferences policy, I know that's a big focus of your energy here, and that, that the work that Paul has already outlined in terms of working with the other consultants to clear the path for that. I know that it's with Alameda County HCD right now, and once we can get through getting their approval to be able to implement, bring a policy or ordinance to you sometime in 2023. Finalizing the funding agreement with the affordable housing developer. We are really excited about the developer who has responded to the NOFA. They're a very well-regarded developer, and the project that they are bringing is a great project. They're very committed to meeting the needs that you've identified already for this community. Developing a first-time homebuyer program, as Paul mentioned, that is something that's a huge need. The Bay Area is having such a hard time with making home purchases possible for people with lower and middle incomes. And so we will be looking at doing an analysis to understand what kinds of approaches you might consider, and hopefully have something for that this year as well. And then on the updating the inclusionary housing policy, as Paul has mentioned earlier, that it's important to be able to provide on-site options so that the units are coming alongside the market rate units. Affordable units are coming alongside market rate units, and that's a great priority to have set. And we will work to develop an RFP with staff to bring on someone to do those studies to set you up for an ordinance or an updated ordinance in the future. So we're happy to take questions and on any of the things that Paul or I have mentioned.
Thank you very much for the report. Colleagues, what I'd like to do is open it up for council questions and then turn it over to the public for any questions that they might. Let me ask the public first for their questions. Madam Chair. For the record, I want to welcome Councilmember Bucci. Madam Clerk, are there any questions from anyone on Zoom on this item?
There are not, Your Honor.
Any questions from anyone in the audience on this? Great. Colleagues, let's turn over to questions, and then we'll come back for comments. Councilmember Bucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My apologies for being tardy. It's a busy time at work. We had an early meeting today. And I apologize if you guys hit this, Paul, but I am going to ask it just real quick because I'm curious and I feel like we're down a good path on our stuff. When it comes to RENA in the state, there haven't exactly been penalties for anybody who hasn't met or even planned to meet the RENA goals. And we've done a pretty good job of meeting or exceeding those goals. So if there's not going to be any penalties, can we expect there to maybe be some benefits to some of the cities that actually meet these goals at some point? I mean, is there a carrot at all?
You can go, yeah.
I think that there will be penalties in the future for cities that aren't meeting their goals. You're correct that in the past there haven't been any carrots or sticks really for communities that aren't meeting their RENA, but they do have a very beefed up enforcement division at HCD now, and I think they're trying to hold cities' feet to the fire in the coming years, and we'll be checking in not just at the end of the planning period, but periodically throughout. I don't know if you have more to add.
So this is RENA 6. So for the record, just how long does RENA last? When is RENA 7?
RENA 7 will start in 2031.
2031, so 8 years. So when you say down the road, do you mean future RENAs or?
No, I mean, for this RENA, yeah, there are definitely both legislative sticks, and also there are advocates and developer groups in the state that are looking to leverage state law to, to bypass local jurisdiction land use and zoning in order to advance projects if jurisdictions don't have adopted and certified housing elements in the next year. So there is increased focus at the state level. The governor, the legislature, the Housing Accountability Division of the State Housing and Community Development Department are all looking at ways that they can use the full panoply of state laws and the housing element process to encourage jurisdictions and to some possibly force jurisdictions to enact land use and planning policies that are pro-housing. On the positive side, so your colleagues in many other jurisdictions around the state, I can tell you, are experiencing the sticks right now, and so you might hear some of this in the news. On the positive side, for jurisdictions that do have adopted and certified housing elements going forward, you'll be in a better position to get state funding for transportation infrastructure, for other types of infrastructure projects. It will definitely affect the ability of cities and counties in California that are looking to fund key projects to be competitive. So that's the carrot. And I know from colleagues of mine who are in jurisdictions who are in positions of responsibility in public works or transportation or other departments that are in jurisdictions that don't have certified housing elements, that they're worried that they won't be competitive for future funding. So there will be carrots as well.
I sure hope so. Thank you, Paul.
Other questions or comments? I just have a couple questions. Can you pull up the chart regarding the number of affordable housing? Yes, no, the one where we've identified where affordable housing is going to be built in our city at Timber. You had,
The 321.
Oh,
yeah,
this
this
one?
one here.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Benoon, do we have dates as to when we anticipate these affordable developments will begin and/or if they have begun, when they might be completed?
I'm going to defer to our Community Development Director, Mr. Turner.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Mayor. Yeah, a lot of those projects are in process. Just going down the list, Timber Street Affordable Housing is just initiating the building permit process, so they're going through the process to receive building permits. Cedar Community Apartments, as you know, that transferred over to Allied Housing. They've had an application process that concluded, and so they're reviewing and scoring applications as we speak, and also working with our county partners in identifying individuals who are homeless who may be able to occupy units. So that is certainly in process now. The first phase at New Park Mall is also in process. They believe that they will start construction grading activities next year, probably before mid-year, but likely sometime in the spring. And then Willow Family Apartments, as you know, council just approved that a few months or so ago. And so that will have to also go through the building permit process before that gets started.
Thank you. And I know one of the issues that we've been interested in, and you mentioned this, Paul, is the local preference. And my understanding is that we have submitted a application to the county for them to review regarding local preference. When would we anticipate a response from the county on that, and what's our likelihood of success?
Yeah, I might take that one.
Sure,
We've been
thank you.
working with the county throughout most of the fall and through the end of this year, particularly with regards to local preference at the Cedar Community Apartments project. So now that that is over, and we weren't successful in getting a local preference for the initial round of applications, we focused our efforts on making sure that all Newark stakeholders and residents were aware of the opportunity. We do have some good news from that. About a quarter of the applications received for the at-risk units were from Newark households. So that's a really great response. And so we believe that even without a local preference, that there could have some Newark households within Cedar Community Apartments. But we will work with the county throughout 2023 to understand their requirements for local preference approval and indemnification that we would also have to enter into the county, indemnifying the county against any fair housing claims that our local preference policy or ordinance might bring. But we're committed to working with them in a close collaborative fashion. The consultant that we chose to prepare our analysis is a well-regarded and respected consultant that has done this before in other cities, and so there's appreciation from the county that we have a very good consultant representing Newark on this effort. So we'll continue to work with them in the early part of 2023 and hopefully then bring a policy or ordinance for council consideration around that time.
And I couldn't agree more with Councilmember Bucci's comments regarding local jurisdictions and their ability to comply with their goals as they set them forward. We take this seriously here in Newark, and our goal is, of course, if you were given a target number, to meet that target number. And looking at your chart, it looked like we would meet those targets in the next 8 years. If a local government exceeds the number of units described in RENA, do they get a credit in the next cycle?
No. Not yet. I mean, that's something, possibly that's something you could talk about with your state senator and assembly person. But that's no, currently no. There is no credit against future RENA obligations.
Right. I will remind the council that Newark has done very well in terms of housing production, particularly at the above moderate level. So we've produced a lot of housing at market rate. We are just getting into the affordable housing development game, so we're lower on those numbers. But there are some jurisdictions that have not even met their above moderate rate, that are very slow in producing housing. And those cities are being penalized. So for those cities that haven't met their targets, they're subject to state law that if an affordable housing project comes in with a certain amount of affordable units, that is a ministerially approved project. And for some cities, that threshold bar is quite low. For Newark, because we have met our above moderate goals, that bar is much higher. So we're doing very well on the above moderate side. And we believe that a lot of the projects that were on the slide on the previous list will actually get counted for this upcoming 6th cycle. So we're going to be kind of ahead of the game very early out of the gate.
They'll all be counted. Anything with a certificate of occupancy after June 30th of 2022 will be counted towards the 6th cycle RENA. So all 4 of those developments that were on that slide are included as part of the plan and proposed column here under planned units, very low and low income units.
Well, these are really exciting times for our city, and Paul, I want to thank you for your help. And Mr. Benoon and your staff have done a great job in this area. We have some exciting policy decisions that are coming forward in the near future, first-time home buyer program and things of that nature that are going to be important to our community. And I think we've demonstrated to our community with the number of affordable housing units that we've built that this is a serious issue, one we certainly stand behind and support, and we're excited about the future of additional affordable housing units in our community. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Yes.
Yes, Councilmember Freitas.
Thank you, Your Honor. Paul, on your presentation at one point, the priority housing needs, one of those bullets, and you're saying it's for individuals and family at risk of homeless. Who will be the county will be the city to identify those when you get to that point, that group of people at risk?
How would you identify people at risk of homelessness?
Yes, so that's
There's no one criteria for doing it. So in the housing needs assessment, that's part of the housing element, we look at the number of individuals, we look at the number of households, both family and non-family households that are extremely low income. That means households that are earning less than 30% of the area median income, or households where one or more members has a special housing need. So folks who are, have various kinds of physical challenges or disabilities, seniors, single parents with children, et cetera. So there are a variety of sort of quantitative measures you can look at to identify households that are potentially at risk of homelessness based on their income characteristics and other household characteristics. So that's one way.
Councilmember Freitas, just building off of Paul's comment, an example of that would be the Cedar Community Apartments. So the units that are set aside for those households that are at risk of being homeless have their eligibility for income is no more than 30% of the area median income, that standard that Paul mentioned. So that is actually a project that identifies for and provides housing for those at-risk households.
This was an informational item. Again, thank you for the information, and we greatly appreciate the support that you provided to our staff.
Well, it's our pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
City council matters. This is to talk about whatever they would like to talk about. So let me turn to my young colleague, Councilmember Jorgens. You're first up.
I would just like to take the time to wish our whole community a happy holiday season to spend with their family and friends. And if you can find time to volunteer and make a community a better place over the holiday season, I would encourage everyone to do so.
Councilmember Bucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is weird not having Al here. It's going to take a while to get used to. I just want to wish everybody, happy holiday, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Yule, whatever you celebrate. I hope you have a great holiday season with your family, and we will see you in 2023.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to, by the same token, to wishing city staff a happy and safe holiday season. And I'm surrounded by a rookie mayor and a rookie council member, so to my left and to my right. So I'd like to wish all the elected officials a safe and warm season and a happy 23.
Vice Mayor Collazo.
The best for last. So, congratulations, you did a wonderful job running our first meeting here today. And congratulations to everybody that was reelected and elected. And, for me, it's the busiest time of the year. Tortilla Factory is swamped. But I love the fact that my customers keep coming back year after year after year. And it's my customers, they're the reason that I'm here, because they're the ones that elected me. Being in business for 50 years, they're my supporters. And so I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, a safe and healthy and prosperous New Year. And don't forget, if you want our stores to stay open here at New Park Mall, you need to shop Newark. So please do your holiday shopping, whatever you can, here in Newark. Thank you.
Get those tamale orders in early.
Exactly. See,
They're filling up.
What you don't hear from my colleague, who is so modest, is she has the best tamales in town and has had so for the last few decades. So that's why the customers continue to come back. And to my young colleague down here at the other end, the Newark Symphonic Winds is going to be performing this weekend, 7 o'clock over at the high school. And Councilmember Jorgens is part of that group. And it's really a festive opportunity. And certainly would welcome our families and our children to come out and enjoy that opportunity. Saturday, 7 p.m. at the high school. I understand a special appearance by Santa Claus is in the works. More on that next time. Mr. Benoon, big thanks to you and your staff. We didn't have a chance to thank the staff last week. What a fabulous reception that you provided to all of our families.
And the holiday party.
And the holiday. Yeah, but big thanks to Lori Gephardt, Mary, Kathy, Roya, and Sheila for putting that event on. I heard from a lot of family members and friends how they really enjoyed the evening. It was really a festive occasion for our community, and you and your staff are to be commended for that. With that being said, I wish everybody a happy holiday. It's really a joyous time of the year to be with family and friends, and certainly take the opportunity to express your love to your family members this holiday season. With that being said, we are adjourned.